As I'm playing around with it and toying, it's got different uh the videos and tutorials.
All over the web.
Yeah,
They're all over the web, and that's why you want to select the tool that is popular, because that's part of the reason why you want to select the tool that's widely used, because of that. Because you'll be, when you need help, you'll be able to find it with relative ease.
exactly.
So
That's what stops people from moving forward on a lot of things. They get stuck and can't get pulled out.
they get stuck and can't get pulled out, and that is an excellent way for us to start this week's episode.
Oh,
We're now at episode 3. This week we're going to talk about getting started. I'm Kyle Brown, and I have Kevin Logan with me, and we're going to talk about getting started, taking action, working towards not only becoming an entrepreneur, but we want to really talk about something that's a little more uh, granular, this on the level of baby steps, small things that you can do to get started. I think we perceive this journey as being something that's grandiose, is over the top. That has to be big. You have to be opening up a store. You have to be quitting a job. But being successful as an entrepreneur, at least from the perspective of getting started, is about, it's really a marathon. It's a lot of little sprints put together. It's not just one big race, or one race that happens once and you're done. So, what are your thoughts on just getting started?
well, first you got to want it. Like people want a lot of things, um, but in their want, it always comes down to the how. One of the discussions I quite often initiate is the fact when we get dressed in the morning. We get dressed, we know how to do that. We may not know specifically what we want to wear if we take in consideration weather, day, where we're going, all that. But for the most part, we know how to get dressed. We know what we're going to put on first, and we normally know what we're going to put on last. We have a sequence in which we do that. And when you talk about taking action, it's more so on the how do I take this action? What's my first step? And you and I always go back to the thinking.
The mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to step back for a second and put myself in. I'm going to try to go back and to a point in time in my life when I felt like I had to plan for everything, and some of this has to do with the way that I felt when I was in the corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
Planning was a lot more of a necessity then, because you had so many different things that you had to maneuver through to reach a goal. No matter how small the goal was, um, there was more of a need for planning there. And some people might say, well, part of the reason why there's so much bureaucracy in corporations is because of all the excessive planning. And a lot of times I agree with that, but there was a level of planning that had to happen. There were things you had to do. There was processes you had to follow before you could take action on something in a job. If for no other reason, uh, getting permission is something that you had to do, and you had to be strategic about that sometimes.
Yeah, planning is a key thing. We all plan something every day, whether it's getting up tomorrow and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or I'm not going to do this. You plan prior to going on vacation. I think that's one of the key things. I read something years ago that was more so talking about being persistent, and that when you go on vacation, if there's a traffic jam or roadblock, We don't say, well, you know what? The road is blocked. There's a traffic jam. I'm going to turn around and go back home. We are persistent to take whatever detour is necessary or to sit in that traffic until the road is open back up so we can reach our destination. So planning, in my opinion, is key. We need to plan, and as you talked about in that corporate level, one of my reasons for planning was because it not only affected me, it affected others. And I had contingency plans because I don't like being tight. I like having nice wiggle room, so to speak, to be able to still get the results and do the outcome, but it doesn't have to be high intensity. Even though what we're doing is critical and there's a high intense there, everybody doesn't have to be high strung to get it done. If we have a plan as to who's going to do what and how it's going to be done, and then we reach those roadblocks or those barriers that say we can't do it this way, okay, then we can fall back to another method versus sitting around saying, okay, what do we do now? Not to say that what do we do now? Sometimes we do reach that point, and that's fine, but I don't want to reach that point unnecessarily if I can put some type of plan into effect. Because with me, I'm always thinking about, I may not use it now, but with our widespread conversations of people that we meet, it can always come into play at some point in time. So I use it I put it in my toolbox.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a case to be made for planning. And there is also, on the other end of the coin, there's a case to be made for just taking action, just doing something, just starting something. And in the startup community, this is a really like one of the cliches that you hear all the time is just get started, just take action. And it took me a little bit of time before I was actually able to really do that. I mean, I would tell myself I was doing it, but I would take action. My action would be I would start planning.
Right.
And then the planning would take weeks, and that's because that's the way I had done it for quite some time. And one day I just decided that I was going to just take action and do something. Now, I wasn't a stranger to it because outside the corporate world on nights and weekends, I was doing that. But more of the planning, more of the way that I did things in the cubicle influenced how I was doing things as an entrepreneur, as a part-time entrepreneur, than vice versa.
Right.
And that was an unfair trade-off. I would rarely have the opportunity to take the things I was learning as an entrepreneur back into the workplace and use those. But it always seemed that the things that I learned in the corporate world were bleeding over into the workplace. So I just made the decision one day that I would just start. I would take the advice that I had been hearing and just start on something. And I don't remember what the first thing was, or the first time was that I actually did that. But I remember the result. And the result was that I actually got accomplished what I set out to accomplish in a matter of days, which would have in the past, I would have spent weeks just planning it.
Yeah, instead of just going and
doing
just
it.
outright doing it. Sometimes, going back again, one of my sayings, jump off the cliff and grow our wings on the way down.
Right, exactly.
And, a lot of times we get educated on the journey, and those journeys aren't always bad. A lot of people think, oh, that all the time you put in and it was a waste. Well, it's only a waste if you're not learning something, if your mindset isn't open to learn from every single thing. The one of the classic things is rushing, and I'll use that at our corporate experience. Not wanting to be late, rushing to work, whether we get up late or we just end up being late. And you plan to get out the door and you're rushing, and all of a sudden hit a traffic jam, and you get up to where everything where the incident occurred, and you say, wow, if I would have been on time, that may have been me in that accident.
Right.
So the planning on it is definitely good to have, and then when other things come in and I don't want to say interfere, but delay us. The delay is not a no. And on your journey, you can sometimes find out a lot of things and see some things that you haven't seen before. A quick story: this time of year, with all the leaves being off of the trees, a road that my wife and I take, I'm gonna say, well, 50% of the time we might come one way and 50% of the time we go another way. But over the years living where we live, we've been on this road thousands of times. And she just saw two houses that she's never seen before. And so she saw them based off of the direction that we were going and the fact that she wasn't driving. And I never saw those before. She said, I've never, in all these years. So even though you may plan to do something or something that you're doing repetitively all the time, quite often there's something in that plan that can teach you something or something that will be revealed to you.
Yeah, I think we're hitting on planning a lot, and we don't necessarily want to. What we're saying is the opposite, really. Like just taking action, and the plan doesn't have to be this elaborate line by line spreadsheet of how you're going to do every single thing. Like you would find in a corporate setting, right? The project manager has one of these things, right? And you got to check all the items off the list, and in that point you're complete. But a plan can be something that you just know subconsciously that you want to accomplish. If you, I set a plan for myself a month ago that I would read 3 specific business books within a quick time frame as I possibly could. And that was the extent of my plan. The plan was really just laying out the objective, and then I attacked it and I took action and I focused solely on doing that. And I was able to get it done in a shorter amount of time than I thought I would. And along the way, there were obstacles. There were things that got in my way. There were things that came up. Sure, life gets in the way all the time. But because I was focused and had taken action, I was motivated to get it completed. I was motivated to get to the end of what I'd started. Whereas had I planned that out and come up with this elaborate plan of, well, I'll read a couple of hours a night for this one, and then in the morning I'll read a couple of hours, it may have worked, but the amount of time that I would have spent planning that out was much better spent by me simply just taking some action.
Yeah, and I agree. We were on that planning, and actually, an action or plan is an action, because if you're gonna plan something where you just took an action in your head, in your mind, to say, I'm going to plan to do this, and so now as we migrate over to the getting started, or go back on topic of getting started and taking the action, that getting started, getting unstuck. If you want to say that you're stuck in something, or if you want something new, it's fine and okay to say, I want to get started on something new, so this is what I am going to do. I'm going to get up a little earlier or after I do, as you said, when doing the part-time entrepreneurship venture, which we've both done. My plan is, when I get off, or this particular day, this is the action that I'm going to take. Whether it be go to a coffee shop, go to a library, or wherever it is, and do what it is I need to do to make what I want to make come to pass, or develop it.
Yes. No, I agree. Planning. I mean, technically, planning would be taking action. But the thing with the problem with plans is plans can they put you in a mindset where you haven't technically started. So you we get ourselves in this place where you want the plan to be perfect. And that's a dangerous place to be because all of your time starts to become planning, that first step.
Right.
And if all of your time is focused on being perfect, you're going to be writing that plan for a considerable amount of time.
Man, is there truly a perfect plan?
No,
And
and that's the point.
exactly, there, you can write it on paper. As you know, one of my things in high school I liked was drafting, and engineering being my first major in college. But putting the plans on a piece of paper, everything lines up perfectly. Everything is measured perfectly until you take that plan to the field, and then the environment. You have to make those adjustments, and surveys come in. The surveyors come in, and well, I know you wanted to hear it can't be there. You have to shift it over, and then you don't have enough room on the right or the left or the front or the back. So, as beautiful as that plan is on paper, when you actually get it in that working environment, some things are going to change, and we've got to be flexible enough to say, I'm good with that. I can take a foot off, an inch off, or I don't have the 20 pages. I've got 18, and keep it moving. But I'm a firm believer. Once you get started on just something, everything else, all the other actions start to line up and present themselves to you as to what you need to do to continue to take action to do whatever it is that you want to get done.
Right, right. Whatever that action is, and that's a good point. So if you think about it, you plan. I mean, you made an excellent point. All the planning in the world will not get you real life experience.
Not at all.
The only way to get real life experience and to find out whether or not whatever your thesis or your idea, whether or not your idea is actually valid or will work, is to actually put it into action. And when you put it into action, you instantly start gathering data about the experience, the obstacles you ran into along the way, what works well, what doesn't work well. And it doesn't have to be software. I'm just, software is my thing, but I'm just saying, and this could apply to any type of business. It's really a universal way to approach things. If you get started, getting started buys you experience that you.
Oh my goodness! Now that's a good one there.
It does, right? The experience that you will never ever get. I don't care how pretty your spreadsheet is and how many line items are on it. It's never going to be as valuable to you as what you're going to learn once you get started. That experience that you're going to gain from getting started is trumps the beautiful planned spreadsheet every single time. And not only that, how can you really plan for something that you haven't tried before? How can you do that?
And it's only so much that you can do because you're getting ready to charter an unknown territory. So you can only do what you know within your mindset to do. And sometimes the only thing you're doing is getting a pencil and piece of paper and being prepared to take notes along on the way. Now of course with the internet, everybody goes on the internet for everything, which is great. But then, did it work? And if it did work, were there any conditional factors? What was the environment like that it worked in versus the environment that you're in?
You're right. That's another good point too. If you're planning on something you've never done before, and all of your plans based on another situation or someone else's experience, you don't know if it's going to be exactly the same for you until you put it into effect. You take the action. And sometimes you hear this and it sounds, initially when I heard this, I thought, well, that's a recipe for disaster. But if there's you can be very agile about things. We for some reason we seem to be really a a one shot type of society, like where you're only going to get one chance, and that's not America anyway. I mean, you're going to get multiple chances to do. We believe in second
Yes,
chances.
Lord.
So if guess
All day
what?
long.
Guess what? If you take action and you don't plan and you don't have great success, then you go back and you plan the next time and you do it again. I mean, that's what's going to happen anyway, because your plan is not going to be perfect, because no plan is. Being an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to take that leap or start to go down that road, who is withdrawn or is being reluctant to do it because they have job security. I guess is the best way for me to put it. What incentive does that person have to do what we're talking about, to just take action? And we're not talking about quitting a job per se. We're just talking about taking some action to pursue what you want to do, whether that's research or talking to people or whatever. But what do you say to the person whose job security is keeping them essentially from doing that something they really want to do, but their job is comfortable?
That's always a tough one. One of the things that I go to before I even approach that is just a general conversation about what they like to do. And I get into hobbies and gifts and meeting that particular need. And if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? What makes you get up in the morning? It's an array of different things that's talked about prior to going there, because you're just not going to break down that barrier of, hey, I'm making an X amount of dollars, and this is something I love to do, but I got bills I got to pay. And so I really have to have just a very generic conversation with an individual, time permitting, of course, and then starting to reveal certain things to say, okay, is that your gift that you're given? What are some of the values that you have within yourself? And are you really happy with it? And once those things start to come out, that's when you can kind of I can kind of do that contrast of where you're going there and you've got job security and you have those benefits. However, what if, let's take being an artist, what if you were able to create that environment that fueled your artistic gift that you love to do? And quickly, of course, yeah, but it won't pay the money. Well, we're not talking about money now. We're just talking about the specific thing that you like to do. Just lining that up where you would do it hours on end, and when it comes out, it's you're proud of it. You poured into it. You know the tools needed to accomplish that particular thing that's within you, and you're proud of it. And that's a key element. A lot of times, individuals with the job security, are they really proud of their jobs? And not saying it's immoral, but are they proud that I had to get up and drop the kids off at such an early time, or I had to stay at work and miss this particular trip, or I had to work late and a family member ended up, picking them up. All of those, what I had to do versus what I want to do. You get into at times a play on words, but in the end, you and I both know that it comes down to words like joy and then happiness, and but before all of that, someone has to just be truthful with themselves. what is it that you really want? And I was in a conversation earlier this week with someone who said, you go into organizations and, when they hire you, they say, here it is, here are your benefits. And it's never a discussion of how long will this last, because the person hiring you, they can't tell you that. So the individual I was speaking to, they made a statement. They said, well, saying that you do nothing wrong, you go to work every day and you work day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and they pay you for the work, and then all of a sudden they get to a point where they say, well, you know what? We've hit some hard times, or whatever the case may be. We're going to lay you off, no longer here. Is it that they didn't hold their promise to you?
Yes. Well, and I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, well,
Right.
Jack Welch, former the CEO of I want to say it's General Electric.
General Electric, yes.
It has a saying that goes like this. When you work for somebody, you come in, you do your 40 hours, and then they compensate you, and then that's the end of it. Um, that is what corporations look for. I mean, I don't know that that's interesting that you say that's never discussed. Like the duration is never discussed. I mean, we might be telling ourselves, "Oh, I'll stay here 20 or 30 years and it'll be all good." But what we don't ever hear an employer, I've never heard an HR person say that to anybody, or certainly not me. This is going to last. Hey, once you sign your name, you're good for 30 years. Okay, never heard it. So it's
Exactly. Exactly.
interesting that you point that out. That's not something we start thinking about until we've either been asked to leave, or we decide to leave on our own, or we get along. We get to a point where we've been somewhere for a long time, and then we start thinking about that. But that's interesting. When this is something that I have long thought about. Long before I thought about leaving a business. Even as just an employee, when I wasn't really thinking too heavily about um, starting my own business, it just never sat well with me that, you know, the folks that I worked with always seemed to place a tremendous amount of emphasis on the job. They had very little emphasis on what they wanted to do outside of the job. And yet, there was always the possibility that somebody could hand you a pink slip and say, we don't need you here anymore. And then there's like a light bulb that goes off for some people at that point, and only at that point, where do they start thinking about other opportunities. I mean, two things come to mind that have happened to me or that I've experienced in my life. One was I always, I've never really discussed this with anybody, but it's always funny to me. When LinkedIn, the social online network, mostly for professional people, right? Um, when they came along, their profiles, the profiles of a lot of the people, and I would go on the site from time to time and look around, and I found that the profiles of people uh, that I worked with generally didn't exist, or they had very little information on them.
Right.
But this was during a time when a lot of people were unfortunately losing their jobs. So I made it a regular thing to go on the site and keep my profile updated, etc. Because I just always felt that it's better for me to be on the ahead of the game than behind it. So, but I would notice that a couple of people that I worked with closely, after they were terminated or asked to leave, their profiles became some of the best profiles on the site. I mean, they had pictures, they had work history, they had recommendations, they had all of these things. But prior to being let go, there was either nothing or very, very little information about them. So that mindset change that happens when we don't have any other choice, that just some for whatever reason isn't, that same level of intensity isn't there um, before we when we still have the security or the perceived security.
Well, one thing I'll chime in real quick with LinkedIn, I, I was one of those individuals, probably like you, that once I got on, I just put stuff on there. I was just looking for opportunity. I don't know, and you let me know your feelings on it. Do you think that some individuals think that employers are on there and they will judge them on the fact that you're out here putting this out and you are employed by this company, so therefore you need to be focused on us and not focused on it looking like you're pursuing something different?
And no, I absolutely, I feel that that is absolutely part of the reason for some. I think there's a percentage of people who just aren't motivated until they have to be motivated. But I think some people, I mean, me personally, I was curious. I mean, I wasn't, I felt like somebody could actually be monitoring this and somebody could step to me and ask me about it. But then my counter thought would be, well, so what? It's my resume. It's my career.
Exactly.
It's my experience. What is wrong with me telling the world what I've done, what I've accomplished? What's wrong with that? So I kind of got over that pretty quickly, especially given the rate that I was watching some people lose their jobs.
Yeah, and I was the same way. I just put it out there. I said, you know, this is me. This is what I've worked to do. This is what I've acquired along the way. I'm going to put it out there. If opportunity knocks, I'm going to answer. And I, like you, I got over it relatively quickly. I don't think I thought about it too much, to be honest with you. I one of the term I don't like to use the term I don't care. I, I respectfully I cared, but it didn't bother me. Handle I was going to handle my business as I saw fit for my business to be handled,
And,
and not uh, playing small. Was not something that I wanted to. That's not something that I've ever done. I'm not the most outwardly aggressive person. I think I'm inwardly more aggressive than I am outwardly. So therefore, if someone was offended by it, I had nothing on there. I apologize that you're offended, but I'm going to keep on doing what I need to do.
and I think it's really just mindset. I just think we look at it in our minds. We feel like there's some level of disloyalty to the company if you are putting your work experience out into the marketplace and in essence shopping yourself around. But
Right.
30 years ago, I don't think a LinkedIn would have existed. But given the workplace as it exists today, where loyalty is way down at the bottom of priorities for a lot of companies, if it exists at all,
Exactly.
being marketable is all we really have. I mean, the degrees, the work experience, of your accomplishments, all of those things are things that belong to you. They don't belong to a company. And now I can remember what the second component of what I wanted to speak to earlier was, which was towards my last days as an employee. uh, I was basically, I won't say confronted because it wasn't a confrontation, but somebody called me and said farewell. I had a few of those kinds of calls from the people that I had worked good working relationships with, and one of the individuals was saying, "Gee, I don't really know what I would do if I wasn't doing this."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And the person was almost befuddled. And this person was my senior in terms of age and in years in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and it just sort of blew me away that this person could not articulate anything to me that they enjoyed doing or want to do. Um, and I said, well, let me ask you this question: what if you find out tomorrow's your last day? And it was
Right.
just like there was just dead silence on the phone. And part of me felt like, I didn't want to put the person on the spot, but I did want to make a point. And I think we have to stop feeling like we have to wait until we are given permission to do what we want to do to start doing what we want to do.
Exactly. When you said, individuals focus on the job, little emphasis on the opportunities outside the job, and they'll put their effort into extracurricular activities, but the betterment of themselves is what suffers more often than not. And it always comes down to, I don't have the time. And I experienced that same thing where an individual just kept saying, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the time. And I had a family just say they did. I actually had more children than they did. And they kept using that as I'm going to say as a crutch. A more appropriate word for me would be an excuse. And when I was forced into the move that I had to make, then they were still saying they didn't have the time, and don't know if they accomplished anything else since then. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I started on my journey years before. But there's some sacrifice that has to come into that. There's some no. There's going to have to be some no's, and I don't think no is a bad word. We have our obligations to meet, but all the time, it's not always a yes. There are countless movies that are out that show CEOs, working sun up to sundown and yes to everything, and and other employees striving to get to places, and when it's all said and done and the competition is out there, the person who thought they should have gotten it doesn't get it, and so forth and so on. And that's, again, you can look at many different movies out there and the cinema world and see that. And basically all of them go back to the
And
point of not selling yourself.
As well as the news,
Yes.
from real actual stories where these things happen.
Right.
In real life.
Yeah. So those are the things that individuals don't focus on. Where they'll play on every team, and they'll even make it to their children's or spouses' events. But when it comes to them bettering themselves, they don't put that out there. They don't take action on that. They don't. You said earlier, you used the term marketable. We market every day, and marketing is an action, and they are not taking a market action towards what they want to do. Hey, I'm thinking about going back to. Hey, I'm thinking about taking this course. I'm thinking about going to this workshop. I'm thinking about getting better in this particular thing that I feel I need to improve on. And that was another conversation I had with an individual that was saying that someone that they knew needed to become better in something. And I gave a few suggestions on some very short things to do. And I honestly don't think that other individual may have been receptive of it. But you're not going to get better by doing nothing.
Well, you have to take some action. I think the key that we really wanted to drive home today was to say, planning can be useful and has its place, but
right.
Job security is a luxury that just is not a reality
not anymore
for most people today. So taking action is basically our way of saying, get started doing something
today.
It doesn't need to be a large task. You can get started by, and for practical purposes, I'll say you can get started by reflecting on yourself and deciding what is it that makes you happy that you would actually like to do.
That's it.
If you already have an idea, start doing some research on that idea. Just try talking to one person who you think might be willing to exchange money for whatever your product or service is. One a day, maybe one a week if that's too much. But, the key is to get started doing something. Nothing's going to happen if you don't get started. There's going to be things that restrict your time, always. There's going to be things that you can't know, always. They're going to be, life will get in the way. But if you don't start, then you won't start.
Yeah, and if you don't start, you definitely aren't going to finish. You're gonna be going in that same circle over and over and over again. And years down the road, your eyes will open, and I've been here before. Yes, you're very familiar with it, because this is the place that you've always been, that you've never decided to make a decision and take an action and start something. Like you say, planning has its place. Too much planning, all you'll be doing is planning a plan that'll never be executed, or no action ever be taken on it.
So I think we have wrapped up this week. In terms of time, we definitely have wrapped up this week. We've given some information on taking action and why it's important to take action. And I believe that concludes this episode. If you have anything else, unless you have something else.
No, that's it. As you said, today, take action today.
Take action today. See you on the next episode.
All right.